faster than a speeding bullet,
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
more powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Hey guys, Jared Moon here, and welcome to the Better Humanology podcast. Today we have Travis Jewett. We'll be talking about mobility, physical therapy, injury proofing yourself, and a lot of other great things. So stick around for this episode. I also wanted to let you know that the End-of-3 fitness test is out. It's been out for a little over a week now. You can go to end3fitness.com, and there's a green button on that page. You can sign up and take our test, and what happens is you actually get free access to the inside of our membership site. And what you do from there, you see a bunch of videos of me. I walk you through every part of the test. It doesn't take very much equipment, really just a kettlebell to take the main portion of the test. And then you can enter in your numbers, and boom, pops out a score. And all of this is based off of a lot of data points we've been collecting for a long time. So if you just want to see how you stack up against our team, our community here at End-of-3 Fitness, then go take that test. I think that it'll be a real eye-opener. Some people have been super surprised that they're a little bit fitter than they thought they were, and then we've also had some people who realize that they need to make some adjustments in their training, and I'd like to see where you sit. And so if you want to go take that test, share your numbers with me. I'll gladly let you know where you are on our leaderboard and where your fitness level is at, and I look forward to you guys taking that. So go to end3fitness.com, sign up to take the test, and you can get it done. It only takes about an hour. All right, guys, let's get to today's interview with Travis. Here we go. All right, Travis, welcome to the Better Humanology podcast, man. I'm super pumped to have you here today.
Yes, thank you, Jared.
So I do like to get started by getting the blood moving, getting the listeners challenged, myself challenged.
Okay.
We have these podcasts go out on Monday, and we really like for people to crush their week, and how we do that is through giving everybody something to chew on mentally and physically. So let's start with that. How about a fitness challenge for everyone listening today?
Okay, my fitness challenge, this is something I've done many times myself and always throw at people, is a 400-meter farmer's walk with a 100-pound dumbbell in each hand. That
sounds pretty taxing. Move it to barbells, and we just got a super serious challenge there. That's awesome, dude. All right, man. So how about a mental toughness challenge?
Mental toughness. I want you to turn off all notifications on your phone, even the ringer and the vibration. And you can only look at your phone for every 4 hours. And I think this is important because most people are going to realize that very little that happens to them during the day requires their immediate attention. And I think we're getting to a point where we almost expect everyone to answer us immediately, and that really drives me nuts. So I feel like we should all get back to those times where there was one phone in your house, and if you weren't home, that was okay. That's
awesome. Yeah, I think people would have a slight panic attack, but no, I think that's a great practice. Something I did, it's been a while now, but I only answer my email from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. every day. Yeah. And it reduces so much anxiety and stress around this constant communication that you're talking about. Is like, oh no, it just came in, I need to respond right away. Like, it's a big game changer there. Is that something that you practice regularly?
I should be better about it, but yeah. I do my best to not bother myself with too many of those things unless I know I've got a time slot available to take a look.
Right.
The only person I'll stop things for is my wife, typically.
That's nice. All right, man. How about a book recommendation?
This book, it's not about fitness, but I feel like everyone should read this book called Bird Box. And it's more of a psychological thriller. And it will really test it's one of those, how would I handle the situations if I was left to this particular scenario? And I don't want to give anything away because it's one of those books where if I almost say anything, it'll kind of ruin part of it. So,
okay.
Josh Malmstrom was the guy's name who wrote the book.
Okay. All right. That sounds good, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you throwing down the challenges and the book recommendation this week. So let's move on to who you are. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now.
All right. Well, like you said, my name's Travis Jewett. I'm a chiropractor. I live in Northwest Iowa. I also have a very long and extensive background in strength and conditioning. My undergrad degree was in exercise science, and I've since have certifications through CrossFit and Strong First. Most people that are familiar with you are probably familiar with both of those. FMS, all those things. I've been lucky and fortunate enough to meet many people in the industry that I've looked up to for a long time, which has been nice. I practice in a clinic up here in the corner of the state, and I also do a lot of work for Kelly Starrett at Mobility WOD. I teach courses for them, and I also have developed my own workshop that I've been working on, helping people with the basics of barbell lifting to try to avoid some of the big pitfalls and problems that can lead to plateaus and nagging injuries.
Awesome.
Does that cover it?
Yeah, man, that covers it. I was just writing down some notes there. I actually want to tackle some of that in reverse, if that's good with you.
Absolutely.
All right, so talking about the barbell basics, right? So people can avoid these pitfalls and whatnot. What are some of the common pitfalls you are seeing?
Well, a lot of it revolves around overcoaching people and not understanding that when you're dealing with an athlete, it's best to try to give them parameters and how you want them to place their body so that they can move most efficiently, and let them kind of practice and experience what you're trying to get them to do instead of getting caught up in like cueing and things like that while they're lifting. You're talking to them about, this is how I want your feet. And while you're squatting, I need your feet to be pointing in this direction, and I need them to stay nice and arched up. I need you to do these certain things to make sure that when our feet are where they're pointed and our trunk is stable, that we can just talk about squatting, or we can just talk about deadlifting, and we don't have to get involved with too much overcoaching. Just people can start moving freely, and you're trying to figure it out a little bit on their own, given some different directions that you point them, I guess. And the big mistake I do see is the feet and the trunk. Those are the two places I see most people fail, because many athletes are kind of stuck in this idea that I picked the bar up off the ground and I stood up with it, therefore it was good. And they really get trapped in this completing the task mindset and not thinking hard about how they're doing everything and how those things can relate to them, getting stuck where they're at, or even becoming injured down the road.
Gotcha. And so I do want to, what are you talking about when you say overcoaching? You're just talking about like too many like unnecessary cues, too many inputs all at once. Like, what do you mean by overcoaching?
I think that's a good way to describe it. And as I do some work with our high school here, and as I have been around out and teaching, that's where I've seen a lot of coaches struggle, is overusing cueing that they've picked up from some certification they may have taken, or from watching people on videos, but not really understanding maybe the context that cue was put in between that athlete and that coach at that time, or not really understanding what they're trying to fix when they throw out blanket cues like put your elbows up, or push your knees out, or anything like that. Sometimes there's a loss in what that coach is trying to say and what the athlete's trying to do and what's actually trying to get fixed.
Gotcha. And do you translate? I mean, you said you have your own clinic. Is that are you teaching this stuff in your clinic, or are you primarily focused on the chiropractic profession, just for your population?
Well, and this is where it gets interesting, Jared, and is really most of my work with people does revolve it revolves around some hands-on work, so to speak, that people are pretty accustomed to if they have visited a chiropractor or anything like that before. But really, I view my job as more of a guide along their way to getting from where they're at now to where they'd like to be, instead of, this is where I'm at, I'm going to go to this chiropractor and I'm not going to change anything about my life, and he's going to make me this thing that I want to be on the other end of it. And And, unfortunately, a lot of people are in that mindset, whether it be with physical therapy, chiropractor, traditional medicine. They have this unfortunate mindset of, I don't really need to adjust my lifestyle, but you'll fix me so that we're okay. And so really, even from the oldest person I've ever dealt with to the most banged up person I've ever dealt with, and even people that have never cared about lifting weights, there are so many principles that apply to just the basics of how you should do your daily things that can be gained from giving them a little bit of understanding of how to use a kettlebell, how to push a sled, how to pick up a bar, and talk to them about how those things translate to where they might be messing up that keeps them coming back to my office.
Oh, so you're saying fix one issue, avoid the other, right?
Yes. And my goal has always been to give people the fewest amount of things they need to do to help themselves. I don't know your 100% background, but if you send somebody home with a list of 10 things to do, how many of them are they going to actually go do?
Maybe 0 or 1.
Maybe 0 if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
And this is a problem we run into in the education system of chiropractors, physical therapists, and maybe this isn't exactly your audience, but I think it's good for them to know, because they're going to seek some of these people out eventually at one point in their life or another. And something that kind of fails in the system is this idea that people can be helped with fewer things than you think. And a lot of our education revolves around learning 12 exercises to activate their core, or their shoulder doesn't quite go overhead, but we're going to do these 6 rotator cuff exercises instead of actually working on the problem, which is their arm going overhead. And instead of focusing on practicing and fixing the thing that's not working, it's like trying to give people 10 different things that we hope helps. Does that make sense? Yeah,
kind of like a shotgun approach.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
I was going to say that, I got injured several years ago, and I had to go to a physical therapist, and I was like, I was very heavily into fitness. I still am, but I mean, just my training schedule was pretty heavy at the time. And then when I got injured, it was military related, not training related.
Okay.
And yeah, I was just like, look, I'm gonna let this physical therapist drive. Whatever he wants me to do, I'm gonna do. But it was, to me at that time, it was just so ridiculous. I was doing like these like little leg lifts and like, all this like, in my opinion, silly stuff, because I'm like this big, strong guy, right? Like that's what I'm thinking. My ego's thinking. But I was just like, no, I'm going to let him do it. And he stuck to very simple stuff. We did like 3 exercises for prolonged time periods. And I did it. That was the main thing, is I committed and did it. And I actually saw significant improvement when working with him. And the only reason I tell that entire story is because I think what you're saying is 100% correct, is like people either don't do it, or they're people who think that they're smarter than the professional, and like they're like, there's no reason that I need to be doing this. And both boats are going to end up putting you in no progress. And I think that you bring in a very, very interesting point in that regard.
And that's something I've always tried to work hard on with the people that I see, whether it be athletes that come find me from somewhere else and are willing to come visit me that have a problem, or just my local patients and athletes, is I always want to say to them, like, we're going to do stuff here, and everything I'm going to do everything I'm going to tell you to do is going to work if you do it.
Right.
And
there's one key ingredient to this working.
Yes, every road leads to that point where it's like, I can only do so much for you. And if you're not willing to meet me part way, then there's really no reason for us to work together. And you hate to say that sometimes, but it happens. But my goal was always to get people back to the things that they enjoy as quick as I could see possible. And most of my rehab that I give people looks like training. It really does. I scale it up and down depending on their skill level and injury history and their ability. But if you're here and your back hurts, there's a good chance you're dragging a sled around my parking lot.
That's awesome. And I think you and I have the same mindset of, trying to fix the problem before it's a problem, because that's what we were talking about. And I think that that's something I try to lead my athletes to in training, is to progress properly so there's no injury down the road. But what would you say are some common things you see in your practice that you think could possibly be easily avoidable? I don't know, through some sort of daily practice or a routine or something.
Well, as a chiropractor, pretty much my entire day revolves around someone's back hurts. So we'll just go into that realm for now. And pretty much I can say across the board, anyone that has come to me with those kinds of issues doesn't understand, or they haven't practiced in a long time, the most efficient way to hinge at the hips to do anything. And most of them have probably lost their ability to squat very effectively. And I'm not asking for perfect squatting, but most of the people that I deal with that have had back pain, one or both of those things is a problem, and likely both. And many of them, if it's, let's say, someone that's 60 years old, let's say, and I ask them, when was the last time you squatted down and your hips were below your knees at the end? Most of them would probably say 50 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But really think about that. Is your background in CrossFit and things like that, I believe?
Is mine?
Yes.
I try to not let it be rounded.
No, I mean no. Your background.
Oh, my background. Sorry. Is my
Not-
back? I thought.
Does your background?
I was like, unless something's getting really taxing, I try to not let that happen.
That's not what I meant. No,
Okay.
Your training background.
Is it in CrossFit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's what I meant.
yeah. So my quick 15-year training history was probably how a lot of guys started bodybuilding, and then I got into CrossFit for several years, and now I kind of still blend, but I really like probably more strength and conditioning based now, because I do like occasional metabolic conditioning, not like an everyday thing like with a class or whatever. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
You know what's funny? I just want a quick sidebar before I get to the real thing I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Was that seems to be the life cycle of people I know that have been around a long time lately. And I don't know what that means, but most of the people I hang out with have a very similar experience. That was kind of mine as well. I started training when I was 12, and it was like squat, bench, deadlift, and you get into some bodybuilding, and then you get into college and you do some weird things, and then I got into CrossFit really heavy, and now I'm just kind of back around to my powerlifting and metabolic conditioning every now and then.
Well, I think that it's a common life cycle. And what's really funny is I think bodybuilding is a phenomenal approach for someone just for like muscular endurance, getting in the repetitions and learning how to move just with a load, because I do think bodybuilding is like really safe for the most part if you're just doing it properly, pretty safe movement. And then CrossFit comes on the scene, and it almost seems like it has this magic piece to it, right? But I know what happened to me was I got really strong in bodybuilding / powerlifting type stuff, and then I was like, well, I'm just going to do CrossFit, go all in, and I got significantly weaker, and I didn't like that, and so then I was like, well, I'm going to have to blend it, put all these pieces together, and kind of develop my own thing here, and now I see. This is kind of a projection over the next 5 years. Is I see bodybuilding coming back and getting worked heavily into this functional space where they used to be like contenders, right? People would be like, if you mentioned bodybuilding, I remember I did when I first got into CrossFit in the forums, like early on, I was like, hey, bodybuilding's not so bad. I did it for a long time, and now I don't have any problems with the RX weights or whatever. And I got just like reamed by everyone on the forums for mentioning bodybuilding. And now if I were to mention that to like some of the top coaches in CrossFit today, they'd be like, no, bodybuilding's actually pretty good. It has a lot of good uses and stuff like that. So it is a very interesting progression that's taken over the years.
Those evil forums, man, you got to stay away from
those. You can't be in those for too long.
No, but in bodybuilding really has an extremely important piece in training, no matter what you're training. If you're not spending some kind of time working the strength and connective tissues around your more prone to injury joints like your elbows and knees and hips and shoulders, if you're not actually spending some quality time doing some high rep work like that, you can really avoid a lot of problems. And I see this around the elbow in athletes I deal with in the CrossFit world. Is a lot of the times they haven't done any focused work around the biceps or triceps in a long time, and sometimes adding those things back into their training helps protect their elbows a little bit more. So I don't know. There's something to it.
No, yeah,
But,
I just think it's awesome. And to be honest, I'm glad that it's coming back, because it's really what's going to happen in the next decade. My prediction is it's just going to be training. There's not going to be one prescription for anything. It's just there's training. Yeah, CrossFit or those Metcons can be thrown in there, but it's just going to be training, and you really have to, if you want the best results, you're just going to have to find a program that fits with you or get it individualized or something.
Absolutely. You have to be able to be willing to do it every day the rest of your life.
Right.
And with the periodic breaks. But if you can't, if you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, can I sustain this? And the answer is no, then you got to figure out what's best for you.
Yeah, what fitness over a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-year timeline. Yeah, what can you... And that's something I bring up to my athletes a lot. If we're going off on a tangent, it's fine with me.
Tangent away. Let's do it. I'll come back to what I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, is one thing is like if you take a look at any, and I kind of want to get your opinion here, but if you take a look at any, whether it's powerlifters, extreme runners or marathon runners, yeah, I mean, look at NFL. It doesn't matter. Power athletes, people at the highest end of the spectrum. They paid the price for that performance,
Yes.
And they see it 20, 30 years down the road. Sometimes it doesn't hit them much later in life. I know I think Dave Tate, big in the powerlifting world, had some significant, he was really aggressive when he was younger, but that's really jacked up some of his, mobility and, his hips and all these things today. And I'm wondering, and I want to get your opinion since, you're in this realm what do you think CrossFit athletes are going to look like? And not because they've only been on a timeline for really high competitive fitness 5 to 10 years. But so what do you see in 20 to 30 years with some of these athletes? Do you think they're going to have problems, or you think that everything's going to be cool?
Oh man, this is a loaded question. Are we both ready to get hate mail? Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah, I have my opinion. I'll voice it, outright. And I think that people will have some problems down the road. But I do also think it's going to depend on how long you compete and all of those things. But
okay. Wait, now let's back off there for a second. Are we just talking about the people that are competing at that high level every year? Is that what we mean?
Yeah. And then we can go down into the other one as well.
Okay. And so this is the way I look at anything. And I think there's probably 1,000 people have said this before. And the one I remember the most is Lou Holtz. And he had always said that it's not the load that breaks people, it's how they carry it. And why I say that is because I think anything has the possibility to be safe for a long time if the person is willing to commit to the quality of the task that they're trying to complete. And if they're going to spend the time moving the most efficiently for their body that they can, take care of the little oil changes and check engine lights and tire rotations that need to be done along the way, and are on top of their sleeping, eating, drinking, and down regulation, coming down at the end of the day so that they can get a quality rest, there's probably a chance that people that compete at the games level for a long time can come out unharmed, but many of them don't live that way. So I think you are going to see like a Dave Tate or someone like that, where people that do struggle with some joint aches and pains and some longer term effects around some of that stuff later down the road. I think as just a general way to do fitness, just to stay keeping your body, fit and in shape, whatever definition you want to use to describe that. As long as if people are efficient in their quality of movement, they should be able to go to a gym like that till they're 90 years old and not come out terribly unharmed, as long as they know how to scale up and down for where they're at.
Yeah, and that's that the double-edged sword of the clock in the group fitness setting, is like,
yes,
if you want to just commit to mastery, and be really good at the movements and don't care about, beating Joe or whoever's in your class, you just care about doing it perfectly. Yeah, I think it's sustainable for a very long time. When you get into that, I'm going to make sacrifices because I want to win type mentality is where I think things go south. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword because it pushes you to be better, right? But it also can make you sacrifice some areas you may not if you were just trying to fully dedicate yourself to mastery.
And once we do things like turn on a clock, offer people money and fame,
right?
Then yes, I mean, corners start to get cut. And unfortunately, you see that in any professional sport or Olympic level sport. When we start talking about money, things start to get, different?
Yeah, tainted. Yeah.
It's the unfortunate nature of the business. And I'm not saying that those things shouldn't happen with sport, but unfortunately you do start seeing less detail paid attention to sometimes, and other people, working to cut corners just for the outcome.
Yeah, and I think CrossFit's done a good job recently of making sure they differentiate between the CrossFit Games and CrossFit, like at a box. I feel like they've done a big push in recent, year to 2 years of these are our elite level, ridiculousness, and you can go to a box and just be healthy.
Absolutely. And that's a big distinction that needs to be made. It is, because a lot of people get turned off by the idea of what they see instead of what it's really about. Yeah.
And so back on, did you have a specific question?
This is what I was going to say.
Okay.
Back to the beginning. So before you started getting into CrossFit, when was the last time you had consistently squatted below parallel?
Just the bodybuilding days?
Yeah.
Not super freak. My squat was pretty terrible when I was in bodybuilding. So not frequently.
Yeah. And if you take the normal athlete who complains about their squat position, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, it's the number one reason anyone emails any of us, my squat sucks, But if you look at an Olympic lifting session, and if you timed the amount of time someone actually spends in the bottom of their squat during an entire session of cleans, let's say,
right?
Yeah, how much time are they really accumulating working on the efficiency of that bottom position? It's probably 10 seconds or less.
Yeah.
And really, a lot of the times those athletes come to me or start at a facility like that, and many of them are in the same boat as you or I. Fortunate for me, I had a really detail-oriented high school coach, which I didn't realize was such a blessing at the time. I thought he was just kind of insane about the level of detail, but it served me well later on. But when I started working with people and noticing, oh, you want to start Olympic lifting, but you haven't squatted below parallel in 20 years. Well, don't you understand that could run into a problem? And many of them, they have a tough time making that connection, or that no one had really explained it to them that way until that point. It's oh, you're right. I'm trying to quickly, under heavy loads, force myself into a shape I haven't been in 20 years. Oh, maybe that could run into a problem down the road. So there you go.
And do you think that, it was Kelly Starrett's first mobility whatever, right? Was spend, yes. I think, was it 5 or 10 minutes in the squat?
10-minute squat test, yeah.
Yeah. So you recommend things like that to combat low back problems and, better squat position, holding position for a long period of time?
So this is what I'll say is back pain, for instance, can be very multi-layered. I can't just say, one thing leads to another. But what I can say is places where back pain is far less common than the United States, people spend much of their leisure time and their rest time and their downtime in a squat position instead of on a chair.
Right.
And so I'm a big proponent of, if you want, especially, let's just talk just as the squat, let's say, if you want it to be better, you have to put in that kind of time. And there's no reason anyone can't over the period of a day, spend 10 1-minute sessions in the bottom of their squat, just kind of prying around and seeing how it feels. Yeah, I posted something on Instagram yesterday. I was like, I found this perfect motor control exercise for squatting. It's called squatting. And, and if you want to get good at it, you have to do it every day. And there's really no way around it. There's not a single shortcut on earth to get to where you want to be.
And it develops pretty fast. When I was training people in the military, we ended almost every training session. I would force everyone to hold the squat position for a certain amount of time. What was crazy was when we started, and when I say force, I don't obviously not forcefully, but that was just how we would end. People, when we first started that exercise, because I told them, I was like, hey, if it gets, I gave them different ways if they need to hold on to something or counterweight themselves or counterbalance themselves, all this stuff. And or if you could just hold it for as long as you can. And people were getting up, they could hold it for 10 seconds, 15 seconds. They need to get up, and these are all relatively young athletes. And by the end though, training with this group for say a year, we were all just chilling in that position, able to hold it for a long duration. So it doesn't really take that much time to really make a significant change. And I think that it could be really beneficial in the long run.
Absolutely. And what did you do? You consistently made it a part of their session.
Right. Yeah, it's almost every day.
Yeah. And what's the secret, right? Consistency over a long time. Isn't that the secret to everything?
I think so. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's true. It's like, hey, if you want to be really, really freaking fit, I got this new program. It's called Workout Every Day for a Decade. But that doesn't sell very well from what I can hear.
The truth is not sexy,
right?
Jared. It's just not sexy.
All right, man. Tell me about some of the workshops and courses you got going on right now.
Yeah. So this weekend, I don't have any idea when this is going to air. But this week coming up, I'll be in Atlanta, and then in June, I'll be in Denver, Atlanta, Toronto in July, and St. Louis in October. And all those courses are through Mobility WOD. That's our new 102 course. If anyone's familiar with Kelly Starrett and the CrossFit Mobility course that we taught he taught it for himself for 5 years, and then he brought a lot of us on staff to help him teach it the last 2 or 3 years before we pulled the material and started working on our own. And so if anyone's familiar with that stuff, this new course kind of takes people into an expansion on a lot of that theory, but also as a strength coach to give them nice, quick, yes or no ways to assess athletes' complete or incomplete positions that are necessary to perform the tasks of training, and to help athletes start solving some of the problems related to training that don't really necessarily need you to go to the doctor or physical therapist, and start working on those things at the gym level, and making that strength coach kind of able to fill that weird gray area between rehab and training. Because if you're in both worlds, I coach and I'm a clinician, there is this massive twilight zone in between the two right now, and that we're just trying to close that gap off. So let's say there's a workout just got done, and one of your athletes like, man, Jared, after those 50 pull-ups, my elbow is just kind of sore on the outside, and that's happened the last few times we've done high volume pull-ups. Your answer shouldn't be go see the physical therapist. It should be, well, let me do these quick assessments and see if there's some basic physiologic range of the shoulder elbow that you're missing. And here's 1 or 2 motor control and mobility exercises that might get us on the right path. And if we're not making progress, then let's go see my friend, the PT or orthopedic surgeon or whatever.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's really been the goal of the course, and to talk into people about things like some of the safe and effective use of a little bit of blood flow restriction and scraping, if you're familiar with Graston tools or hot grips or any of those things, just giving the coach some understanding of the basics of those so they can pass along that knowledge to the athlete. You're not providing the service to the athlete, but you're showing the athlete, hey, this can be effective for that problem you're having. This is kind of how you would do it. Now go home and do that for a little bit, and then talk to me if you're getting better or worse, then we'll make a decision from there.
Yeah, that is a very, like you said, twilight gray area. Because where do you think that your just personal opinion, where do you think the role of the coach ends in that regard, versus where and maybe it's not based off of those assessments like you're saying, but maybe we could dive into it a little bit deeper. But like, where do you think it ends to where a coach should, once you get kind of outside of your scope, you get into a dangerous zone if you can't actually help someone.
Yes.
And so, so I'm just curious what your take on that is. How fine is that line?
So I feel like as a coach, always you're never wrong referring. So if anything an athlete says you smells like it's above your pay grade, get them out of there. But something like I just mentioned, like with the elbow, where it's like it doesn't hurt all the time. It only hurts after we do these pull-ups, and then it's gone in a couple of hours. Well, then there's something that's causing that incident every time we do pull-ups that's not necessarily an injury. And we also discuss in the course some of these red flag questions that you should be asking the athlete about the problem before you make a decision on, should I even be assessing them, or should I just be getting them out of here? And if you're going through an assessment and you feel like this problem, this person that I'm seeing, I only feel like it will get helped if someone actually physically lays their hands on the person and helps them move it, then that's not for you either. I don't know a state that allows coaches to manually work on people's joints and soft tissues.
Yeah, and there definitely needs to be a line. I do feel like with all of the education, it's really awesome, in all honesty, like all these different courses and certifications that we can take that are way more at a usable level, as opposed to like classroom stuff that in college that's basically useless. It's like the stuff that you can like actually use as a coach on your clients. But also I think that sometimes it forces a coach to think that they need to be like literally an expert in almost everything. And that could be a problem as well. I know that because I do that find that a fine line. I was actually asking for myself primarily because if someone's dealing with some sort of nagging injury, I might I want to check their position. I want to see maybe they're doing something incorrectly. I just haven't noticed. I want to spend a little one time with them. But then if it's like still hurting, we tried correcting this, then they're out the door for me. And I think that's a good way. That's a good way to handle it, Jared. See fish around for what you think you can change first to see if it makes a difference. And I think a lot of people forget that they're coaches first, and they forget that maybe they're just doing it wrong and I haven't noticed. Right. Yeah. And it's a spectrum, but I do appreciate that, man. I think that's really, really awesome that you have helped put together this course. And you said that you've written a few books as well. I did. Let's hear about them. They're very short books. So if people that listen are like me and they don't like to read for long periods of time, you can probably get them done on the toilet. They're fairly short, but I'm a dad and I have 4 children and I run a clinic and I teach and I travel a lot. And so I wanted to create a couple of resources, and one of them, the first one I ever wrote, was called Dad Strong. It was just this idea that it doesn't take that much time if you understand the very basics of things to do to keep yourself at a reasonable level of body composition and strength. And I think a lot of people were getting stuck in this idea that, I've got to go to the gym and I've got to wear these shorts and I've got to buy these knee sleeves and I have to, make sure that I take my pre-workout and that they have this particular bar. And it's like, I have this garage and everything in there pretty much was free. And I just understand that if I know the basics of training, I can make progress for a long time with almost nothing. And the time commitment to just at least stay on top of it isn't that extensive. And then the second one I did was called The Way of Dad Strong, which was just helping people in the same situations as me that have very busy lives, just how to program a week
and how to take it from, if I only have 2 days to commit, what do I need to focus on? If I could get out in my garage 4 or 5 days a week, what are some of these other fluffy things I could add in to make it even more interesting? But to just help people understand the very simplest that they need to commit to, and to just do it. I mean, that's step one.
I think so. Would you say that book's kind of all about programming? Is that like if I had to like?
The second book was more about programming. The first one was more about yelling at you for being soft.
Okay, all right. So hitting them on the psychology level, I like it.
And that there's no excuse for you to do nothing. That was basically the first one. And then the second one was I wrote later that year, and I can email you the links to this stuff. But the second one was more around, okay, now you've decided that you're going to get off your butt and do something. Here's the easiest ways to program and the minimum stuff you would need to make it work.
Okay, awesome. I love programming. That's why I was asking. It's one of my favorite things to do on the planet. So
I am not a master programmer, but I do enjoy the fun of trying to make someone progress. I think it's a game, and it's always an intellectual experiment.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. All right, man, I'm going to shift gears on you real hard here. You ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so this is what we call the book question. So say there's a nationwide curriculum implemented, and the president calls you up, and he says, he says, you're responsible for one chapter of the book. So every single child in America will have to read your chapter and be tested on and pass before they're allowed to graduate high school and pursue any sort of further education. What would your chapter be about?
So it could be about anything.
Literally anything. Doesn't have to be what your profession is. It can be, but it doesn't have to be like really anything that you want it to be about.
I would say that my chapter would be about how to make decisions about what's really important to get worked up about.
Okay. So you think people like maybe get over anxious or spun up on little things?
Correct. I think many people, whether it's hard to really put a finger on it, but I think a lot of people with varying life experiences, many people have never been put in situations where they have really had to understand what really matters. And you were in the military. I don't know if you served in wartime or peacetime, but you probably had to go through a checklist at one point of what is really important.
Yeah.
And I think we try to have these conversations with our kids when they get tied up in social stuff at school, or someone sends them a weird text that they don't understand or something like that. It's like you have to be able to take stock of the situation. And this probably sounds a lot like Jocko Willink, but probably because I listened to his podcast. But people have to be able to take stock of what's actually happening, detach themselves a little bit and say, is this worth getting worked up about? Is this worth getting an argument with someone over? Or is there a way to understand the situation and just kind of move past it without letting it affect you too much?
And how old are your kids?
They are 11, 8, 6, and 20 months. So
okay. Nice.
Got to teach that little baby girl how to get after it,
Right. All right, man. I think that's really great advice. I think, and I love that you work on that with your kids. And the reason I ask their ages is because I have my kids are young. They're one's about to be 5 and 2. But I'm just curious because with like when you're in middle school, high school, it could be really hard to tell them that what they think is important isn't all that important. You know what I mean? Like not necessarily in that way, but like like, hey, that's not a big deal. Is there any particular way you approach that?
That's kind of exactly what I tell them. I'm not great at. I do feel like as a clinician, I'm pretty good with empathizing with people because you have to be able to communicate. But at the same time, you can't be afraid to be direct either. And with our oldest would be in middle school here, and I've told him that before right to him, and he was saying something about a friend and this and that, and I said, hey, listen up, Bryce. 5 years from now, you're going to realize none of this mattered. And most of these things that people are making a big deal aren't a big deal at all. And you just have to start to understand how to differentiate between what's a problem, what isn't, how to move past it. And if something embarrassing happens to you, you have to, I think in public relations, they call it owning the story, right?
Right.
You've got to be out in front of it. Yeah, you can't let people use something like that to turn it on you. You've got to make sure you can turn around and just own it and make a couple jokes, and everyone forgets about it.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's really good advice, because I know just like going back to school for kids and whatnot, it's kind of hilarious. Is the high school is 4 years of your life, but I really feel like a lot of people either gain a ton of confidence or get really beat up and screwed up in high school, or you know, they spend the rest of their lives trying to impress people who were only in school with for 4 years. You know, it's just it's this crazy time period in life. But I think that really coincides. If you could get that message across to your kids or anyone else listening to this podcast, like, hey, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, we have a bigger thing. It's called life, and you should try focusing on that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, dude. So let's jump into the quick fire question of the show.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, what's the hardest workout you've ever done?
I will have to not take a nod to CrossFit here. It was the very first one I ever did. I had been reading about it in a magazine. I went to their website, went to the gym, and it was 20 straight minutes of push presses, dips, and push-ups.
Nice.
And I didn't understand while I was doing it why I was like, why is this so hard? And then why am I doing this? That question kept occurring to me, but I thought, I'm going to finish this. And for 7 days, I could not get my hand to my face to eat.
Right.
And my wife was laughing at me. She thought I was kidding, and I couldn't drink coffee, and that's what was killing me.
Yeah.
Like,
get a big straw or something.
I had never been so sore. And if anything, I think a lot of people, like we had mentioned this before, but the missing ingredient in a lot of people's workouts was effort. And that showed me that I probably wasn't giving enough effort in my training, and I paid the price with soreness.
Wow. Yeah. That's, so was that kind of your eye opener to CrossFit, and what kind of pulled you into it a little bit more?
That's what pulled me into it for about 3 years, was like the fact that effort was not something that everyone actually gives in their training.
Yeah.
And I thought I was giving effort until I was asked to give effort.
Yeah, that's a very similar story to how I started CrossFit. Is when me and my buddy, we were like workout partners for a long time. Always lifting, bodybuilding style stuff, getting a lot stronger, getting a lot bigger. And then his dad played for the University of Texas. He was just this extremely well-rounded athlete. And he was just like, you guys should try a real man's workout one day. and we're like, what are you talking about, dude? We're about to do bench press. Like, what's more man than that? And then he had us do a CrossFit workout, and I just absolutely had my ass handed to me and was like, okay, I don't know what I've been doing, because I'm apparently not as fit as I thought I was. It's cool that we have a similar story, man. That's
yeah.
All right. So in your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
Putting all of your kids in a car with you and driving 22 hours to the Grand Canyon and tent camping for a week.
Oh man. Yeah. I only have 2 kids, and that sounds pretty challenging. I can only imagine with 4 doubling that. Man,
it was funny when we left. We didn't think a lot about it, and when we got home, we realized that it was 100% insane.
Yeah, that's that's pretty crazy. It sounds like a good idea at the time, but
it sounded like a great idea. But I did learn a lot about patience. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. All right, man. If you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah, I went back and forth around this a lot, but I do feel like if someone took away everything and said you can only keep one of the things you have, it'd be this handmade 65-pound dumbbell I have in the garage.
Okay, kind of like I'm curious about the handmade part of that.
It was crafted by the shop teacher at the high school in the town that I live in currently.
That's cool.
And they were just going to throw them all away when they remodeled their weight room. And I said, I'll take some of these. So I took the 65s and the 100s. So if you're ever in my garage, those are only 2 choices for dumbbell work.
Nice. Better work up to it. Yeah.
But I feel like that if I could just keep one of those, I could work plenty hard the rest of my life.
That's awesome. All right, man, here's the question. So what is the best advice you have for becoming a better human? And this is 100% open-ended.
Man, I feel like and this is something that I've been working on a lot. If you want to become a better human, you need to spend more time reading. It's something I struggle with. I've always had trouble sitting down with a book, and I don't 100% know why that is. But it's something I've been working to be better at. I feel like the art of being quiet and reading is something that a lot of men especially are not good at anymore. And the other one is making sure, and I'm not going to get political, but just making sure that you understand how democracy works and that you make sure that you are 100% interested and involved and understand all the issues that could or could not affect you before you make decisions.
I got you. That makes sense.
I think a lot of people have been blowing that off. That's all I'll say. All
right, man. And I especially love the reading one. That's big on the podcast. We always have the guests, or I'll bring one myself, book recommendations. Yeah, I think that's great. All right, man. So where can people learn more about you and what you're doing if they want to connect?
The easiest way is Instagram, Dr. Jewett 07, DRJEWETT 07. I have my workshops available, which we kind of discussed, which I've got 8 or 9 dates coming up around the country. That's Mastering the Basics. I can send you a link for that. And, just those are that, through Instagram, people can always message me. I'm pretty good about answering messages on there if I feel the question is relevant.
All right, perfect, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'll make sure I'll link to everything, including your books and anything else you got when we publish this podcast, man. But I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Jared.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.